Today, what about us, says property investors. Hello again, it's Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Welcome to this post covering finance and property news with a distinctively Australian flavour. Well, the most recent ABS data showed a rise in mortgage lending for property investors, coming off a long period of low growth, despite higher mortgage rates now clearly on the horizon. So I read with some amusement this from Domain saying, although the 2022-23 federal budget was focused primarily on helping owner-occupiers, first home buyers and those needing affordable housing, many believe more should have been done to support residential property investors too. There is a real need for more rental accommodation, particularly in the regions where vacancy rates are virtually zero in many areas, says Max Schiffman, National President of the Urban Development Institute of Australia. We rely partly on investors to provide homes for tenants, but the supply of housing isn't keeping up with the demand at all. Supply-side support and reforms are critical. So the budget was a missed opportunity to fix the planning system to deliver more new housing and to support the provision of more infrastructure to build on land capable of being developed. It instead extended the home guarantee scheme with a further 50,000 places over the next 3 years to first home buyers, single parents and people in the regions to enter the property market with as small as a deposit of 5%. It also boosted the development of affordable housing. On the plus side, the budget was aimed at creating a stronger economy, and that in a broad sense is good for everyone, including investors, said Jarek Kawasaka, Chief Economist at St George Economics. If unemployment was reduced, then that will feed into higher wage growth, which will add to demand across the economy. That's very positive for owner-occupiers and investors alike in the longer term. The challenge for both will be the likelihood of interest rates rising later this year and next, which will slow price growth and create challenges for investors. But the opening of international borders and increased migration will push up demand for rentals. Other budget measures like the cost of living support package with tax offsets, the cut to the rate of fuel excise and one-off payments to those on lower incomes could also help boost the economy, as may the incentives for small businesses. Meanwhile, the additional spending on disaster relief could serve to mitigate some of the cost of the floods. Zaki Amir, a property investment advisor and founder of DDP Property, said the biggest comfort for investors at the moment is the historically low interest rate and the relaxing of lending protocols by the banks. Investors are currently finding it easy to raise loans because while first home buyers are often priced out of the market, investors tend to use the equity in their existing properties, he said. So the last 2 years of price growth has been to their advantage. In addition, councils are having a lot of available land rezoned so developments can take place. The real problem is that there's often not enough infrastructure there to support housing. The government's been more concerned about shoring up our national security than putting in more infrastructure. Yet that's exactly what many of the developer organisations are calling for in the budget and say they're not receiving. Development and construction provide 9% of GDP and 11% of full-time jobs, Schiffman says. Many of the affordability issues with housing comes from a lack of development-ready land, and we'd like to see further measures to improve the planning system to fast-track infrastructure and streamline approvals. Now, let me just take this apart a bit. Firstly, of course, property investors still get huge support by way of negative gearing relief and also capital gains relief. So there are plenty of incentives out there to encourage investors into the market. And the other question to ask, of course, is whether in fact more property investors is a good thing if they compete directly with first-time buyers who, as the article said, are often being squeezed out of the market. Now, I'm not anti-investor. I think there is a role for them. But I have to say, I think the gradient is very much in their favour, and it has been for some time. And what we really need is a different approach altogether, which essentially breaks apart this nexus of seeing property fundamentally as an investment. It's more about somewhere to live. I'd also make the point, as I made in my article yesterday, that the build-to-rent sector, which is really going gangbusters now, thanks partly to the alignment of political power and also the planning authorities, the build to rent sector is really now overtaking ordinary investors. I don't think that's a good thing, by the way. So there's a lot here to think about in terms of trying to figure out which way to take strategy going forward. My own perspective would be this. I think there is room still to provide incentives for the odd investment property or two to encourage more people to think of investment in property as a good thing to do. But I'm also of the view that once you start moving into the multi-portfolio area of property investing, and specifically the build-to-rent area, then frankly, there should be no further government support or incentives. The reason for that is that those distort the market. And I know of a number of property investors who have 20, 30 and 40 properties, and they're doing very nicely, thank you. They are still putting the rents up and making it harder for tenants to be able to afford to rent them. And of course, the build to rent is still in the same mode of operation, except that they probably charge 15 to 20% more, as I discussed the other day. So glibly saying there should be more in the budget for investors, I think, is a sign that people haven't really understood what's going on. There needs to be a very different way of thinking about the problem and specifically laying out more strategic plans for the future. By the way, there's 1.2 million spare properties across Australia. What we need to do is to get those released into the market, and perhaps there should be a scheme to encourage people with spare properties to put them into the rental market. Now there's a novel idea. That could really change the supply and demand dynamics and potentially bring rents down, and also, by the way, change the dynamics around property investing too. Now, if you're buying your home in Sydney's contentious market, you don't need to stand alone. This is the time you need to have Edwin Almeida from Ribbon Property Consultants standing alongside you. Buying a property is both challenging and adversarial. The vendor has a professional on their side. Emotions run high, price discovery and price transparency are hard to find, and then there's the wasted time and financial investments that you make. Edwin understands your needs, so why not engage a licensed professional to stand alongside you? With RPC, you know you have experience, knowledge, and master negotiators looking after your best interests. So shoot Ribbon an email at info@ribbonproperty.com.au, and if you use the promo code DFAWTW/Martin, you can get a 10% discount offer. I'm Martin North from Digital Finance Analytics. Many thanks for watching, and I'll see you again next time.